He said the baby wasn't his, and in that moment, my whole body went cold. I remember the sound of the ceiling fan more than his words, the soft, uneven click as it struggled to turn, like it was tired too. I remember the way my tea had gone untouched, a thin skin forming on top, and how my hands kept rubbing my stomach without me realizing it. I was 12 weeks pregnant. I had just come back from my appointment, the one where I'd heard the heartbeat for the first time. I was still floating in that fragile happiness when my husband, Rashid, looked at me and said, very calmly, "We need to talk." There was no anger in his voice, no sadness either, just distance. That was what scared me. He didn't sit beside me like he usually did. He stayed standing, arms crossed, eyes fixed somewhere over my shoulder, like he couldn't bring himself to look at my face. When he finally spoke, it felt rehearsed. "I don't think the baby is mine." For a second, I honestly thought I'd misheard him. I even smiled, a confused little smile, waiting for him to laugh and say it was a joke. But he didn't. His face stayed hard, almost defensive. "What do you mean?" I asked. My voice sounded small to my own ears. He exhaled slowly, as if I'd asked something unreasonable. "The timing doesn't add up, and there have been things. You've been distant." Distant? I was growing a human being inside me, nauseous, exhausted, emotional, and he was calling that distant? I stood up so fast the chair scraped loudly against the floor. My heart started racing, not with anger at first, but with disbelief. "Are you accusing me of cheating on me?" He finally looked at me then, and what I saw wasn't certainty. It was fear. And something else, something I didn't understand yet. "I'm just saying I need proof," he said. Proof of my own pregnancy, of my loyalty, of my marriage. That was the moment something cracked inside me, not loudly, not all at once, just a quiet fracture that would keep spreading. Before all of this, my life was simple in the best way. Rashid and I had been married for 6 years. Not a perfect marriage, no one's is, but a steady one. We met through family friends, the old-fashioned way. I worked as a primary school teacher, and he ran a small logistics business with his older sister, Sana. She was always around, always involved. At first, I thought it was sweet how close they were. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment above a bakery. Every morning, the smell of fresh bread drifted through our windows. I used to wake up early just to sit on the balcony with my coffee and watch the city stretch itself awake. Rashid would join me sometimes, still half asleep, his hair sticking up in strange directions, smiling like a boy caught doing something wrong when I teased him. We talked about children often, not obsessively, but with quiet hope. We wanted to be ready, emotionally, financially. When I finally saw those 2 lines on the pregnancy test, my hands shook so badly I had to sit on the bathroom floor. I cried, laughed, cried again. Rashid lifted me off the tiles and spun me around like we were teenagers. He told everyone, his parents, his sister, even the bakery owner downstairs. Sana hugged me tightly when she heard the news. She said, "I knew it," she said, smiling wide. "I just knew it would happen this year." Looking back now, that smile feels different in my memory, tighter, like it was holding something in. The first few weeks of pregnancy were hard on me. I was tired all the time. Food smells made me gag. Some days I barely had the energy to get out of bed. Rashid tried, I'll give him that. He brought me crackers, ginger tea, warm soups. But something shifted between us, not because of the baby, but because of everything else. Sana started coming over more often. At first, it felt helpful. She'd bring home-cooked meals, insist I rest, scold Rashid if the house wasn't clean enough. But gradually, her concern began to feel like control. She asked questions that felt too personal. "How long have you been feeling sick? Are you sure about the dates? Did the doctor say everything looks normal?"
Once, when Rashid wasn't in the room, she asked me very casually, "You and Rashid were trying for a while, right?" "Yes," I said. "Why?" She shrugged. "No reason, just asking." I brushed it off. I didn't want to be that woman, the one who reads into every comment, every look. I trusted my husband. I trusted my family. The first real crack came the night Rashid didn't come home. He said he was meeting a client late. I believed him, but when midnight came and went and his phone went straight to voicemail, a familiar anxiety settled into my chest. I sat on the couch, one hand on my stomach, the other clutching my phone, refreshing the screen like that would change something. He came in close to 2 a.m. His shirt smelled faintly of cigarette smoke. He didn't smoke. "Where were you?" I asked gently. I wasn't trying to accuse him. I just needed reassurance. "He was with Sana," he said too quickly. "Work stuff." I nodded, but something about the way he avoided my eyes stayed with me long after we went to bed. Over the next few weeks, the distance grew. He stopped coming to doctor appointments with me. He took calls in the other room. When I tried to talk about baby names or future plans, he'd change the subject or tell me not to stress him out. Then came the day of my appointment, the heartbeat, that steady, miraculous sound filling the room. I recorded it on my phone, my hands trembling with joy. I couldn't wait to share it with him. I didn't know I was walking into an accusation that would turn my life upside down. When he told me the baby wasn't his, I felt humiliated before I felt angry, like my integrity, my body, my entire history with him was suddenly on trial. "Who's been putting these ideas in your head?" I asked quietly. He hesitated, just for a second. "No one," he said. "It's just logic." Logic doesn't usually come with hesitation. That night, after he left the apartment to clear his head, I sat alone on the bed and cried until my chest hurt. I called my mother, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. I just said Rashid and I had a fight. What I didn't know yet was that the truth was already cracking its way to the surface, and it would come from the last person I expected, his sister. The next morning, Rashid didn't come home. I woke up alone, the other side of the bed cold and untouched, like it had been that way all night. For a moment, I lay still, listening to the city outside, the delivery trucks, the bakery downstairs starting its ovens, a woman calling out to her child from the street. Life was moving forward, indifferent to the way mine felt stuck in midair. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no messages. I told myself not to panic. He needed space, he'd said. Men always needed space when things got emotional. That was what everyone said anyway. I showered slowly, letting the warm water run over my shoulders, trying to wash away the heaviness sitting on my chest. I dressed for work even though my body felt heavier than it should have, my limbs sluggish, my head dull. At school, I went through the motions. I smiled at my students, helped them with their reading, tied shoelaces, wiped noses, but my mind kept drifting back to his words. "I don't think the baby is mine." Each time the thought surfaced, it felt like a fresh wound. By lunchtime, my phone finally buzzed. A message from Sana. "Can we talk?" Just that. No greeting, no warmth. I stared at the screen longer than necessary before replying. "About what?" "About you and Rashid. Please, it's important." I should have said no. I should have waited for my husband to come to me to explain himself. But curiosity and fear has a way of overpowering pride. I told her to come by the apartment that evening. When I got home, Rashid still wasn't there. His shoes were missing from the rack by the door. A knot tightened in my stomach. Sana arrived just after sunset. She brought no food this time, no forced cheer. She looked serious, her lips pressed into a thin line as she stepped inside. We sat across from each other at the small dining table, the same table where we'd eaten countless family meals, laughed over stories, planned holidays. Now it felt like a courtroom. She folded her hands carefully. "I think you know why Rashid is upset."
I took a breath. He thinks I cheated on him. She nodded slowly, too slowly. He has reasons. That was the first time anger truly flared in me. What reasons? I demanded, because last I checked, I've been throwing up every morning and going to bed by 9. When exactly was I supposed to be having an affair? Her eyes flickered, not to me, to my stomach. It's not about that, she said. It's about timing, about facts. Facts, I repeated bitterly. Then say them. She leaned back in her chair, studying me in a way that made my skin crawl. Rashid and I have talked about this. The dates don't line up with when you said you conceived. That's impossible, I said. The doctor confirmed. The doctor only knows what you tell them, she interrupted. I stared at her, stunned. Are you accusing me too? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she said, you know Rashid has always trusted you. This has been very hard on him. Hard on him? I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound that surprised even me. He accused his pregnant wife of cheating and left her alone, and you're worried about how hard this is on him? Her jaw tightened. You don't understand everything that's at stake. That sentence hung in the air between us, heavy with something unsaid. What does that mean? I asked quietly. She stood up abruptly. I think it's best if you get a paternity test. The words hit me like a slap. A test, I whispered? You want me to prove my own child is my husband's? If you have nothing to hide, she said, already moving toward the door, then it shouldn't be a problem. After she left, I sat there long after the sun had disappeared, the apartment dark around me. I felt stripped of something fundamental, not just trust, but dignity. I had married into this family, shared holidays, grief, joy, and now, with a few carefully chosen words, they had reduced me to a suspect. Rashid finally came home late that night. He didn't look at me when he walked in. He set his keys down quietly, like he was afraid of waking someone. We need to talk, I said. He sighed, tired in a way that felt practiced. I know Sana spoke to you. So this is coming from her, not from you? I asked. He hesitated. Again, that hesitation was starting to feel like a language of its own. She just pointed out things I hadn't considered, he said. Like what? I pressed. He rubbed his face with both hands. Like how quickly everything happened, like you were distant before you even knew you were pregnant. I felt my throat tighten. I was stressed. We both were. That doesn't mean... I want a test, he said suddenly, just to be sure. I searched his face, hoping to find doubt, shame, something human. But what I saw was resolute, not born of truth, but of fear. If I say no, I asked. He looked at me then, finally. Then I don't know how we move forward. That night, I slept on the couch. The days that followed blurred together. He barely spoke to me unless it was about logistics, appointments, bills, the test. I agreed to it, not because I owed them proof, but because I needed the truth to stand on my side, solid and undeniable. But somewhere deep down, a quiet voice whispered that this wasn't really about science. It was about something else. The test was scheduled for the following week. Sana insisted on being involved, offering to help with arrangements. I let her. I wanted to see how far she'd go. The slip didn't happen all at once. It came in pieces, in moments when she thought I wasn't listening. One afternoon, as she sat in my living room scrolling through her phone, she muttered under her breath, I told him this would get complicated. I froze. You told him what? She looked up, startled. Nothing. I was just thinking out loud. But the air had changed. A few days later, she mentioned something else, something small, almost insignificant, except it wasn't. Well, at least once this is over, Rashid won't have to worry about explaining anything to our parents. Explaining what?
I asked, my heart pounding. She waved her hand dismissively. Family drama. You know how people talk. I didn't know, but I was starting to understand. The truth was circling closer now, tightening its grip, and soon it would slip, completely, unmistakably, from her mouth.
The night Sana finally slipped, it didn't come with shouting or drama. It came quietly, disguised as concern. She had insisted on staying for dinner. Rashid wasn't home yet. He'd been spending most evenings at work or at his parents' place, anywhere but with me. I cooked anyway, chopped onions slowly, methodically, letting the sting in my eyes give me an excuse if I needed to wipe away tears. Sana sat at the table, scrolling through her phone, occasionally glancing up to comment on the smell of the food or the weather. Ordinary things. Too ordinary, considering the weight hanging between us. "Have you heard from Rashid today?" she asked. "He texted, said he'd be late." She nodded, unsurprised. "He's under a lot of pressure." "So am I," I replied before I could stop myself. She looked up then, really looked at me, her eyes lingering on my face, my hands, my stomach. "Yes," she said softly, "you are." We ate in near silence. The clink of cutlery against plates felt louder than usual. I could feel something coiled inside me, waiting. I didn't know what I was waiting for, only that I was tired of pretending everything was normal. Halfway through the meal, Sana's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and frowned. "It's Rashid," she said, standing up and moving toward the balcony. She didn't close the door all the way. I wasn't trying to listen, I swear I wasn't, but when you're already drowning in suspicion, even muffled voices sound like lifelines. "Yes," she said quietly, "I'm with her." A pause. I know, but you can't keep avoiding her forever." Another pause, longer this time. Her voice dropped. "No, she doesn't suspect that. She thinks this is about the baby." My fork clattered against my plate. I froze, every muscle in my body going rigid. This is about the baby. That was what I thought. That was what they wanted me to think. Sana came back inside a moment later, her face carefully neutral. "Sorry about that," she said. "Rashid's just stressed." I pushed my plate away, my appetite gone. "What did you mean just now?" I asked. She blinked. "What do you mean?" "You said, 'I don't suspect that.' What is that?" Her lips parted, then closed again. "You must have misheard." "I didn't," I said calmly, though my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "You said, 'I think this is about the baby.'" She sat down slowly, studying me. "And it is." "No," I said, "it's not." Silence stretched between us. The ceiling fan clicked overhead, the same tired rhythm from that first night. Sana's fingers tapped lightly against the table, a nervous habit I'd seen many times before. "You're exhausted. Pregnancy can make you emotional." That word again, emotional, as if my instincts, my intelligence dissolved the moment I conceived. "Tell me the truth. Whatever this really is, tell me now." She let out a slow breath, her shoulders slumping just a little. "You're overthinking things." I stood up. My legs felt unsteady, but I forced myself to stay upright. "If I am, then it should be easy for you to explain why my husband accused me of cheating without ever talking to me first, why you're so involved in this, why you just told him I don't suspect something." Her eyes darted to the balcony door, then back to me. "You don't understand family matters," she said sharply. "Some things are better handled quietly." "Handled by who?" I asked. "You?" She didn't answer. That was all I needed. I walked past her, into the bedroom, and closed the door behind me. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hand shaking now, no longer able to hide it from myself. I pressed my palms against my stomach, grounding myself, reminding myself why I needed to be strong. The next day, I made a decision. If they wanted to test me, I would let the truth test them. I called the clinic and confirmed the paternity appointment. Then I called Rashid's mother. She sounded surprised to hear from me, warm but cautious. Is everything all right, Beta? It's not, I said honestly. It's not? There was a pause. What's going on? I told her about the accusation, the test, the distance. I didn't embellish. I didn't accuse Sana directly. I simply laid out the facts as they had been given to me. By the time I finished, her voice had changed. Rashid didn't tell us any of this. I didn't think he had, I said. We'll talk, she said firmly. All of us. That evening, Rashid came home earlier than usual. He looked tense, jaw tight, eyes restless. My mother called, he said without greeting. What did you tell her? The truth, I replied. He ran a hand through his hair. You didn't have to involve them. You involved your sister, I said quietly. Why is that different? He didn't answer. The family meeting was set for 2 days later at his parents' house. Sana arrived before we did. I could tell by the way Rashid stiffened when he saw her car. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy. His parents sat side by side on the couch, confusion etched into their faces. Sana perched on the armchair, composed as ever. His mother gestured for me to sit. We need to understand what's happening. Before I could speak, Sana cleared her throat. This is very delicate. I looked at her then, really looked at her, at the way her hands were folded, her posture controlled. She always liked control. What's delicate is accusing a woman of carrying another man's child without evidence. Rashid shifted uncomfortably. We're just trying to be careful. Careful of what? His father asked sharply. Sana opened her mouth. And then she said it. Well, she said a little too quickly, given everything that happened before, it's not unreasonable to question things. The room went quiet. Before what? I asked. She froze. Her eyes widened just slightly. She slipped. The silence that followed her words was thick enough to choke on. Before what? I asked again, slower this time. Sana's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Rashid, a sharp, warning look, the kind people give when they've said too much. But it was too late. His parents had noticed too. Before what, Sana? His mother repeated, her voice suddenly firm. Sana straightened in her seat, forcing a small, uneasy smile. I just meant before everything became complicated. What complications? His father asked. This pregnancy is the complication you keep talking around? Rashid stood up abruptly. This isn't helping. I remained seated, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. My heart was racing, but I forced my voice to stay steady. No, I said, this is the first thing that's helped in weeks. I turned back to Sana. You said everything that happened before. If there's something you think makes it reasonable to accuse me of cheating, say it out loud. She swallowed. For the first time since I'd known her, Sana looked unsure. I don't think this is the right time, she said. Then when? I asked. After the test? After you've convinced everyone I'm a liar? Rashid's mother leaned forward. Sana, if you know something, you need to speak now. Sana's fingers tightened around the armrest. It's not that simple. I let out a quiet, bitter laugh. It never is when someone's been lying. That was when she snapped. You weren't supposed to get pregnant, she said, the words spilling out sharp and fast. The room seemed to tilt. Rashid turned toward her. What are you saying? She pressed her lips together, eyes darting around the room like she was looking for an exit that didn't exist. You weren't supposed to, she repeated, softer this time. I felt a cold spread through my chest. Why? I whispered. Why wasn't I supposed to get pregnant? Sana looked at Rashid again. He shook his head almost imperceptibly. She ignored him. Because, she said, exhaling, this was supposed to be temporary. His mother's hand flew to her mouth. Temporary? I stood up slowly, every nerve in my body on fire. Temporary what? Sana finally met my eyes, and in that moment I saw it clearly. Not malice, not jealousy, but fear, desperate, ugly fear. Rashid and I needed time to sort things out. Sort out what? I asked. She squeezed her eyes shut. The business. The room went quiet again, but this time the silence carried weight. What does the business have to do with my pregnancy? I asked. Rashid spoke then, his voice strained. Sana, stop. But she didn't. You don't understand how close we were to losing everything, she said, her words tumbling over each other now. The loans, the investors. If Rashid became a father, his priorities would change. He wouldn't be able to move, to take risks. His father stared at her. You encouraged this? She nodded. I told him to wait, to focus. I told him you two could try later. My legs felt weak. I gripped the back of the chair to steady myself. So you told him to delay having a child? Yes, she said. And when you got pregnant anyway, it complicated things. Complicated what? I asked, my voice barely audible now. She hesitated. Then, like someone stepping off a cliff, she said it. The inheritance. His mother's mouth gasped. What inheritance? Sana looked at her parents, then back at me. The apartment. The bakery below us, the building we lived in. You were planning to sell it, she continued, her voice shaking, to invest in the expansion. But if Rashid had a child, his share would be different. You'd have rights. The baby would have rights. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. So you decided, I said slowly, that it would be easier if the baby wasn't his. Rashid sank back on the couch, his face pale. Sana? She didn't tell him to accuse you, she said quickly. I just asked questions, raised doubts. You poisoned his mind. She flinched. And when he started to believe you, you let it happen. His mother stood up, her voice trembling with anger. You tore this family apart over money? It wasn't just money, Sana cried. It was security. I laughed then, a hollow sound. You tried to erase my child for security. Rashid looked at me, his eyes finally filling with tears. I didn't know it would go this far. But you let it, I said. You let me be humiliated, alone. The room erupted into overlapping voices, his parents shouting, Sana crying, Rashid apologizing. I stood there, numb, my hands pressed protectively over my stomach. In that moment, I understood something clearly. This wasn't about whether my husband believed me. It was about whether he chose me, and he hadn't, not when it mattered most. I left shortly after, ignoring Rashid's pleas for me to stay. As I stepped outside, the evening air felt sharp in my lungs. I walked without knowing where I was going, my mind replaying Sana's words over and over. You weren't supposed to get pregnant. By the time I got home, I had made another decision. The test would go ahead, but not for them, for me. And when the truth came out, it would change everything. The days leading up to the test felt unreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. Rashid called me constantly after that night. Apologies spilled from him in long, tangled messages. He said he'd been confused, pressured, that he never truly believed I'd cheated, that he was sorry for letting his sister influence him. I listened to the voicemails once. Then I stopped answering, because I had learned something important. Regret sounds very different after the damage is done. I stayed with my mother for a few days. Her apartment smelled like cardamom and old books, familiar and comforting. She didn't ask too many questions at first. She just made sure I ate, that I rested, that I wasn't alone with my thoughts for too long. One night, as she rubbed oil into my hair the way she used to when I was a child, I finally told her everything. She didn't interrupt. She didn't gasp or cry. When I finished, she said quietly, Some people don't need proof to believe you. Others don't deserve it. The day of the test arrived gray and overcast. Rashid was there, so was Sana. Seeing her in the clinic waiting room made something tighten in my chest. She avoided my eyes, her confidence gone, replaced by a brittle politeness. This is unnecessary now, Rashid whispered to me. We know the truth. I looked at him. Really looked. You don't, I said. You only know what's convenient. The test itself was clinical and impersonal. A technician explained the process in a calm voice, as if this was just another appointment. To me, it felt like a public dissection of my private life. When it was over, I felt drained, empty. "The results will be ready in a week," the technician said. A week? 7 more days of waiting. But fate, it seemed, was done waiting. 2 days later, Rashid's mother called me. Her voice was tight with urgency. "We need to talk. Can you come over?" When I arrived, the atmosphere was tense. His parents sat at the table, papers spread out in front of them. Sana stood by the window, arms crossed, her jaw set. "What's going on?" I asked. His father slid one of the papers toward me. I glanced down. I recognized the address immediately. "The building," I said softly. His mother nodded. "We never finalized the sale. Sana pressured us to move quickly." Sana scoffed. "Because it made sense." "It made sense to you," his mother snapped, "not to this family." Rashid entered the room then, his face tense. "What's happening?" His father stood. "We're stopping everything. No sale, no expansion, not like this." Sana's face flushed. "You can't just—" "We can," his father said firmly, "and we are." She turned to Rashid, desperation creeping into her voice. "You said you were on my side." Rashid looked between her and his parents, then finally at me. Something in his expression shifted. For the first time since all this began, he looked ashamed. "I should have been," he said quietly, "but not like this." Sana laughed bitterly. "So you'll just throw it all away? Over her?" "Over her." I stepped forward before I could stop myself. "No," I said, "over your lies." She glared at me. "You don't understand what it's like to carry responsibility. And you don't understand what it's like to carry a child while being accused of destroying your own marriage." Silence fell. That was when Rashid's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, frowned, then answered. "Hello?" His face changed as he listened. The color drained from his cheeks. "Yes," he said. "Yes, I understand." He hung up slowly. "It was the clinic," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They ran a preliminary check." My heart skipped. "And?" He swallowed hard. "The baby is mine." Sana let out a sharp breath, like she'd been punched. His mother closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. His father sank back into his chair. Rashid looked at me, his eyes red. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry." I felt calm, not relieved, not vindicated, just calm. "Sorry doesn't undo what you did," I said, "or what you let happen." Sana spoke then, her voice brittle. "So what now? You win?" I looked at her. This was never a competition. I left shortly after, the confirmation echoing in my mind. The baby was his. I had been right all along. But standing in that room, watching the consequences unfold, I realized something else. Being right didn't heal the damage. The truth had come out, but the cost was already paid. And now, the hardest part was still ahead. The days after the confirmation felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just hollow, like the storm had passed, but everything it touched had been stripped bare. Rashid kept calling. He stood outside my mother's apartment twice, once with flowers I didn't accept, once with nothing but his hands in his pockets and his head bowed. Each time I watched from the window and said nothing. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because I needed to hear my own thoughts without his voice filling the space. Inside me, the baby moved more often now, small flutters that felt like gentle reminders, life insisting on continuing. One afternoon, Rashid's mother came alone. She looked older somehow, her shoulders heavier, her eyes tired in a way I hadn't seen before. She held my hands when I opened the door, her grip firm but trembling. "I failed you," she said simply. I shook my head. "You didn't accuse me." I raised someone who did, she replied, and I let another one believe it. She sat with me at the kitchen table and cried quietly, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. She told me Sana had moved out of their parents' house after the confrontation, that the business partnership had been dissolved, that the family was fractured in ways she didn't know how to mend. I don't expect forgiveness, she said, but I needed you to know I believe you. I always should have. After she left, I sat alone for a long time, my hands wrapped around a mug of tea gone cold. Her words warmed me, but they didn't close the wound. Because belief after proof isn't the same as belief before doubt. Rashid finally asked to talk somewhere neutral, a park near the river where we used to walk on Sunday mornings. I agreed, not because I was ready to reconcile, but because I needed clarity. He looked thinner when I saw him, sleepless. He sat on the bench beside me, but left a careful distance between us. I know I don't deserve anything from you, he said, but I need you to understand how sorry I am. I watched the water move slowly beneath the bridge. What understanding isn't the problem, I said. Trust is. He nodded. I let my fear choose for me. You let your sister choose for you, I corrected gently. He winced. Yes. Silence settled between us, broken only by the sound of children playing nearby. I was scared of becoming invisible, he admitted, in the business, in the family. Sana made it sound like this baby would derail everything. And what about me? I asked softly. Where did I fit into that fear? He didn't have an answer. That was answer enough. I won't keep you from your child, I said finally, but I won't pretend this didn't happen. Tears spilled down his cheeks. He didn't wipe them away. I'll do whatever you ask. Counseling, space, time. I stood up slowly. What I'm asking for is honesty, consistency, and respect, not promises. He nodded, broken. I'll try. Trying, I knew, was the bare minimum. The public fallout came quietly but thoroughly. Word traveled, as it always does. Friends stopped calling Sana, invitations dried up, whispers followed her at family gatherings she no longer attended. No one shouted, no one humiliated her publicly. They didn't have to. Her absence said enough. As for me, people began looking at me differently, with sympathy, with admiration, with curiosity. Some asked questions I didn't answer, others offered support I accepted cautiously. Pregnancy as a way of sharpening truth. I learned who showed up because they cared and who showed up because they wanted a story. I moved back into my apartment eventually. Rashid stayed elsewhere. The space felt different now, quieter, mine again. I repainted the bedroom a soft, warm color. I opened the windows more often. I let myself imagine a future that didn't depend on someone else's approval. Therapy helped. So did long walks, journaling, and letting myself grieve the marriage I thought I had. One evening, as I folded tiny baby clothes, I realized something surprising. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger requires energy. I had redirected mine towards something else, towards building a life that felt safe, honest, and strong. Rashid came to one appointment later that month. He sat quietly, respectful, listening more than speaking. It was a start, not a fix. I didn't know yet what our final shape would be, as parents, as partners, or not at all. But I knew this. I would never again accept being doubted into silence. The baby kicked softly, as if agreeing, and for the first time in a long while, I smiled without forcing it. The closer I got to my due date, the more clearly everything came into focus. Not in a dramatic, movie-ending kind of way, but in the quiet, everyday moments that force you to decide who you are willing to be. Rashid stayed consistent. That surprised me more than anything else. He didn't push. He didn't show up unannounced anymore. He asked before coming to appointments. He listened, really listened, when doctors spoke, when I spoke. Sometimes he said very little, and for the first time in our marriage, that felt like effort rather than distance. One afternoon after an appointment, we sat in the car in silence. The ultrasound picture rested on my lap, the edges already soft from being handled too much. "I used to think love meant being chosen," I said quietly. He looked at me, cautious. "What does it mean now?" "It means being protected," I said, "especially when I'm most vulnerable." He nodded slowly. "I failed you there." "Yes," I said, "you did." I didn't soften it. I didn't raise my voice either. I let the truth stand on its own. That night, I dreamed of holding my baby for the first time. In the dream, the room was bright and warm, and I wasn't afraid. When I woke up, my pillow was damp with tears, but they weren't painful tears. They felt like release. Sana tried to reach out once. It was a message, late at night. "I never meant to hurt you." I stared at the words for a long time. Then I typed back, "Intent doesn't erase impact." I didn't send anything else. I didn't need to. Some people mistake access for entitlement. Losing access was her consequence. The birth came earlier than expected. I was grading papers when the cramps started, sharp and steady, like a clock counting down whether I was ready or not. My mother rushed me to the hospital. Rashid arrived shortly after, pale and breathless, his fear finally matching mine. Labor has a way of stripping everything else away. Pride, history, anger. When the pain peaked, all I knew was breath and pressure and the steady voice of the nurse telling me I was doing well. When my baby cried for the first time, something inside me finally unclenched. They placed her on my chest, warm and impossibly small. Her fingers curled instinctively around mine, like she already trusted me completely. In that moment, I made a silent promise. No one would ever make her feel unwanted. Rashid stood beside the bed, tears streaming freely now. He didn't reach for me. He didn't assume his place. He waited. "Do you want to hold her?" I asked. His breath caught. "Yes, if that's okay." I nodded. Watching him cradle our daughter was complicated, tender, painful, hopeful, all at once. People think forgiveness is a single decision. It's not. It's a series of choices made over and over again, some days easier than others. The weeks after the birth were slow and exhausting, sleepless nights, feedings, the constant hum of responsibility. Rashid helped when I allowed it. My mother filled in the gaps. We didn't rush anything. Eventually, conversations became easier. Laughter returned in small doses. Trust rebuilt itself, not as it once was, but sturdier in some ways because it was earned. One evening, as I rocked my daughter to sleep, Rashid sat across from me on the couch. "I know you might never see me the same way," he said, "and I accept that." I looked down at our baby's peaceful face. "I don't need perfection," I said. "I need accountability." He nodded. "Then I'll spend my life giving you that." I didn't respond right away. Because this story was never just about him. It was about what happens when a woman refuses to let doubt define her, when she stands still enough for the truth to catch up. I had been accused, isolated, and nearly erased. Instead, I emerged clearer, stronger, whole. And as I held my daughter, breathing in that new baby scent, I knew this chapter, painful as it had been, had given me something powerful: my voice. The days settled differently now. Not like they used to, when every knock at the door felt like judgment, every silence in the house felt like accusation. Now, even the quiet is comforting. My daughter sleeps peacefully, and when she stirs, I feel her tiny hand brush against mine, grounding me in a life I've fought to protect. Holding her, I finally understand what it means to reclaim something that was almost taken from you. Not with anger, not with retaliation, but with clarity and courage. I survived accusations, betrayals, and the manipulations of those I thought I could trust. I endured, not because I was strong in every moment, but because I learned to hold on to myself when everyone else questioned me. Rashid has his part to play now, too. He is learning the weight of his choices, the damage caused by listening to doubt rather than love, by letting fear dictate his actions. He is trying, quietly, patiently, to rebuild trust brick by brick. And I am watching, judging, guiding, protecting my heart, my child, my family. Sana is gone from our lives. Her influence no longer shapes our decisions. The family has fractured, but in the spaces left by lies and manipulation, new truths have grown. The moral is clear. Deception may seem to give someone power for a moment, but truth has its own momentum, and integrity endures. As I look at my daughter, I realize this story isn't just about accusations or family drama. It's about resilience, about knowing your worth when everyone else doubts you, about standing firm in the face of betrayal, about choosing your peace even when others try to steal it. So I ask you, the viewer, when someone questions your honesty, your integrity, or your love, what do you hold on to? How do you protect what is yours? Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you or made you think, share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to hear more real-life stories of betrayal, courage, and redemption, please subscribe and support the channel, because sometimes the hardest truths reveal the strongest people.